fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst, Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawk fans, welcome back to the show. I'm Bill Alvstad, your host, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We're wrapping the draft today. Exciting 3 days. The Seahawks, I think, came in with a clear plan. I thought they executed it really well. Keith, tell me what you think. Welcome in.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this draft, and I like it overall. There was some stuff that was I was like, wait, what are they doing? And then it answered itself with the next pick and stuff like that. So, I like what they did. It's a little weird that they doubled up on so many positions.
That's crazy.
But at the same time, they doubled up in areas where they need talent and they need guys that can jump in and do stuff now. And that's, that's what they needed to do.
And John Snyder in the post-press conference indicated that. He's just like, yeah, that's the way the draft fell. It kind of fell that way to us. That's kind of the way that we wanted it to. And that's why we ended up not trading out on some of these things. They had some things lined up, but when they were getting ready to make the picks, guys that they liked were there. And so they kind of walked away from those trade back opportunities. They did trade back once with, I think, Kansas City to pick up an additional 7th round pick and pulled off one of those double moves in selecting the second wide receiver. And at the end of the draft for the Seahawks, Tariq Young. But let's go over the picks. Just clear early. Cross was the great pick there at the top for Seattle. Then
starting left tackle. Yep.
Yeah,
starting outside linebacker.
Kenneth Walker, which
best running back, and
we can talk about that in a little bit. Best running back, right? Abraham Lucas out of Washington State. It's at 372.
Starting right tackle.
I know it's crazy. and then we haven't had a show yet to talk about day 3, so I thought we'd kind of spend a little bit more time right at the top here talking about the 4th round picks and 5th and 6th and so forth. So Kobe Bryant, the cornerback out of Cincinnati, the Jim Thorpe award winner for the best defensive back in all of college football, is there. Seattle takes him. When we prepped for the draft over the last 3 or 4 months, I think we've mentioned Kobe Bryant a couple different times, but never really kind of profiled him a little bit because of his arm length, I think, is really basically kind of how we kind of glossed over that a little bit at 30 and a half inches, essentially. But he's an otherwise long corner. Yeah, he's otherwise, though, a stout kind of corner at 6'1" and 294 or something like that. So 10 career interceptions in overall. And he said in his presser for the Seahawks, I feel like I make a lot of plays on the ball, so I would say that my ball skills are the best in this draft.
Okay.
And you know what? I kind of believe him after looking at his tape.
Well, so I'm looking at this, and when the Seahawks made that pick, there were other corners on the board that I like better. I think they're better prospects. He's not particularly
I hope you were wrong like you were wrong last year.
Yeah, sure. And I will be absolutely okay
I know
with
you
that.
will. I know you would.
But so because he's not particularly fast, he's not particularly long. He is sticky in coverage, but really I think he is his future is as a nickel, a slot guy, and they've got guys that can do that. But well, like I said, when that pick happened, I was like, okay. I mean, I see it, but I also am kind of disappointed. It wasn't a pick that I saw as moving the needle at all.
Who was the guy that we brought in free agency right at the end there that added to the slot corner room that we had previously?
Justin Coleman.
That's right. He's missing from my roster, so I got to add him.
Coleman was, when he was with Seattle, one of the best slot corners in the league. He is absolutely an underrated and underappreciated person, in that locker room. Honestly, the last 3 years when he's been gone, I haven't really followed where he's been as far as like his production and performance. So he may have fallen off, and that's why.
Well, he went to Detroit, right? That's where he signed his free agency deal initially.
I don't know if it was there. I don't know. In my head, I was thinking Buffalo, but yeah, it's probably Detroit. It's hard to do anything well in Detroit.
And it's hard to get lost. I mean, it's hard to get noticed. It's easy to get lost over there. So you're kind of a little bit on the Kobe Bryant pick, or do you think this at this point in the draft, this is kind of where you look for guys like this?
I mean, okay, at this point in the draft, this is where I expected him to go. I was kind of but I was only because of other players that I wanted them to get who were available. My level absolutely changed when they made their next pick.
Well, let's talk about that. Well, I have to talk about that because we've been talking about this guy for a long time, and he's kind of one of my draft crushes, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to watch him develop. Tariq Woolen, the cornerback out of UTSA, that would be the University of Texas at San Antonio. I know that now by memory. I didn't know that the first time that I evaluated this prospect way back in the day, a couple months ago. 6'4", 212, 33 and 5/8 arms, ran a 4.26, 42-inch vertical. The 40 was the fourth fastest since 2006. Tariq Woolen, man, dude, I am so psyched to have a long corner in this cornerback room again. It's been a while.
His straight line speed is noticeable. He plays that fast. He also changes direction significantly better than you'd expect for a guy who's 6'4", plays really strong, plays very physical.
Pete Carroll thought he was the tallest player in the NFL to ever run that fast.
Oh, I don't doubt that.
That's crazy to watch him and DK Metcalf go at it in practice.
Yeah, I mean he's
fun stuff right there.
He's faster in the 40 than DK Metcalf. Both 6'4" They're both very physical, very muscular guys who just athletically freaks. Guys that size should not be able to move in the way that they do. And so I'll be honest, with Woolen sitting there as such a high ceiling guy, granted, low floor, because he's got a lot of work to do.
He does have a lot of work to do. He's not a good cornerback right now and played in a bad conference. And so
well, he
does have some work.
He was a wide receiver until about halfway through the season, the 2021 season, and then switched over to corner simply because the team was desperate, and he was willing to do it and looked lost. As you might expect, playing a position you've never played before. Stayed at cornerback over the offseason, came back this year, looked better, looked more natural, but still is learning. He's still learning the position.
Well, the good news, Keith, he went to the right team.
He did go to the right team.
He went to a team with a coach who gets it. He went to a team with Sean Desai, the defensive coordinator from Chicago, who is previously a cornerbacks coach for a number of years, and then Carl Scott, who's got great background as a corner coach. We've got the best corner coaches in the league, and they're all on the same team. And this guy's going to get coached up.
Well, the only name missing from that list of coaches would be Chris Richard. He was the guy responsible for coaching up the Legion of Boom. And I mean, yes, Pete Carroll was there too, but Chris Richard was the guy with his, he was there in the players' ears, showing them technique, showing them what to do. And I at this point, when you get a guy like Woolen, I'm like, oh God, I wish he was back here because Richard will get the most out of him. That doesn't say that Desai and the rest of these guys won't. I'm just saying, like, I've seen it. I've watched it happen. I've been at practices where I've seen Richard coach, and I'm kind of missed that. But anyway, so when we get to this pick, this is the super high ceiling. This guy has like Pro Bowl potential. He's got completely washed out of the NFL floor. But he's got Pro Bowl potential as an athlete.
And if it doesn't work for him, let's flip him over to the wide receiver position again, and we'll see what he can do there.
Yeah, let him run in straight lines.
Yes.
So when they made this pick with the fourth pick in round 4, suddenly the Kobe Bryant pick made way more sense, because this is a team that needs a cornerback. They needed a starting cornerback. They needed a guy that can come in and play right now and get them through this gap between week 1 when it starts and when Trey Brown is healthy. They needed a guy who could do that. And Kobe
Bob,
Bryant,
just so you know, too, Bob Condata made an indication yesterday that he thought that Trey Brown would be ready for training camp. So I don't know if that's true. And you talked yesterday about, well, that may be true, but he might not be 100%. And I think that's clearly the case. It would have to be.
The patellar tendon injuries tend to take over a year, and it's not just the surgery in the knee and the rehab, but there's just other things that go into getting like the muscle balance right. There's a reason why guys that have that particular injury tend to tear their calf muscle next, and like typically during their rehab or during when they come back. It's just one of those things that happens. He may be back, he may be ready to play, but that doesn't mean he'll be the same quality of player he was
and I think
right away.
It really comes down to how severe the tear was. Like, was it complete? Was it 30%? If it's 30%, then he's got a real shot. If it was a full tear, or if it was 75% or more, that's tough. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So we doubled down at corner back to back. We had doubled down previously at offensive tackle, and with the next pick, they doubled down at the edge position. Tariq Smith, Ohio State, 6'3", 245 pounds, edge rusher, outside linebacker in a 3-4. His pressure rates and so forth, and especially in 2020, were actually top 10 in college football. Dropped off a little bit in 2021. It's an interesting prospect. He seems a little unrefined, and that's why he was available at this spot.
Yeah, and then you look at why was he more productive in previous years and less productive this last year? And it's hard to go through and say, oh, well, he was more productive when there was more talent around him, or he was more productive when he was used less, kind of one of those guys that, make him play every down and his effectiveness goes down. Use him as a situational pass rusher where he's got one job and he gets better. It's hard to say that, when you play at Ohio State, the talent around you is always elite.
But those area scouts have figured that out, and they made the pick. So they must have a high degree of confidence exactly what's going on with him.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, you look at his production, especially in years past, and you'd think, oh, this is a guy who has a shot of being, like a 3rd round pick. And then his production falls completely off, and you're like, wait, what's going on? And then he ends up as a 5th round pick.
I think he ended up landing here because his testing wasn't as good as everyone thought, and he's slightly undersized at 254 pounds. So he's going to be an outside linebacker, it looks like, possibly in the NFL. And as the 3-4 guy, you want a little bit more of an athletic prospect to be able to drop back into coverage and so forth. He is going to primarily come up and play the edge. I would have to think that he's just going to be in that rotation. The same thing with Boye Mafe, as kind of that Leo role. And then after they see kind of what they've got there, they would integrate him into more of a 3-4 outside guy.
Yeah. To me, as they switched to the 3-4, this pick made a little bit less sense, simply because the athleticism. This is a guy that ran a 4.86 40. There are offensive linemen that outran him.
Yeah, and so I don't get that. Now that to me is either an outlier and he was injured, or he decided to run through something or whatever. So maybe they had some better testing numbers that they relied on, because I just don't see a Pete Carroll defense bringing in a guy with that sort of a number attached to him. I just don't. It doesn't fit at all what they try to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that he screams 4-3 defensive end. Basically in the old Chris Clemens role, where your hands
exactly
on the ground,
right.
you line up a little wider than you'd think a defensive end should, and then you just come off the edge. But with that speed, you don't want him dropping back into coverage. He'll be
so maybe he's just super twitchy, but he's got slow straight line. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But he's too small to be on the line in the 3-4. So as they switch to this 3-4, he just doesn't fit. And that was my only problem with this pick. I like the player. I just think that there's a scheme fit issue, and it might just be he's at 254 now. Maybe they get his weight up to like 265, 270, and then they do use him on the line, and that would be fine. But just at the moment, with the information that I have, I was just kind of like, that's weird. Yeah. Especially when they went and got Boye Mafe, which we keep saying wrong. It's Boye Mafe.
Boye. I figured I'd figure it out at some point. So thank you.
So Boye, we've both been doing it. I'm not saying that. Like, I learned this yesterday.
Boye. Boye. All right.
So yeah, Boye Mafe is a guy that fits all those athletic profiles, and you want him at outside linebacker in your 3-4. And so the fact that they got that, and then also went here with a guy that his speed is like weird. I'm like, they've got a plan. I don't know what it is. I don't see it, because I don't know. I just don't see it. But they've got a plan for what they're going to do with him, and I'm okay with that. Like, let's see what he's got. It's not a bad pick. It's just a bad scheme fit. As an athlete and as a player, I think he is going to be a good football player.
Yeah, unless his testing numbers are out of whack and we just don't know, like his pro day stuff. Maybe that came in better. Yeah, private workout or whatever.
If he came in and he was a private workout guy, he was one of their 30 private workout guys, and if he came in and impressed and ran a 40 and ran it in 4.6.
Right. Exactly. It's a way different situation. Absolutely. And I don't know that they would draft a guy with a 4.8 40. Something had to give there. Okay. And we didn't have a 6th round pick. We did pick up that 158. That kind of accomplished, I think, what they wanted to do. And then they sat on the clock for a while, and they finally made a pick at 7-29 overall. I think Bo Melton, wide receiver, Rutgers. He's a quick guy, ran a 4.34 40, 1.48 10-yard split. Dan Brugler had him as the 20th ranked wide receiver in this draft, and so getting him there is good value. I'm just not sure. He's like a 5'10" receiver, I think 187 or something like that. So
5'11", 189.
Okay.
Only 31 and a quarter inch arms, relatively small hands, which is part of it. But 4.3, 4.40, vertical jump of 38, broad jump of 121, 3 cone under 7. This is a guy with if he was 20 pounds heavier, he'd be a running back.
What was the guy that we drafted from Hawaii a while ago that's been on the roster for 10 years? John Ursua. He's like he's the faster, more athletic, skilled wide receiver in a John Ursua body, only younger and more athletic. And so this guy has got a real opportunity. If he can return punts and kicks to stick.
And go be a gunner and that kind of stuff. I think that he is, like I said, he is a guy with a running back's body. He is, just the way his legs are, the way he's built, all of that. He's light. You wouldn't want to use him in that role. But he's a guy that Yeah, returning kicks, getting him the ball on jet sweeps,
Yeah.
or wide receiver screens, getting him the ball there, it will lead to good things because he's going to be able to do stuff with the ball in his hands. He has some good route running stuff. He can get downfield. It's hard to evaluate what you've got with him because the quarterback play was so bad. And I mean, that's just a problem with some of this. His tape in 2020 was significantly better than his recent tape. So I think that's part of it.
But at this point in the draft, here's a guy, we've talked about it many times. It's like you go get a safety, you go get a corner, you go get a wide receiver, guy with super athletic upside that can play special teams, that has a chance maybe to make your roster as a 5th or 6th wide receiver, that could maybe do something, some gadget plays in space, return punts, kicks, etc. So I like that pick overall. I think it's, who knows what you've got, but you get him in camp and you kind of figure it out and you see. I kind of like the last pick that Seattle made as far as a guy and a visit into the VMAC on one of those 30 visits. Tariq Young, the wide receiver out of Lenore-Rhine at 6'3", 220 pounds. This morning I watched some film on him. And
you found Lenore-Rhine film?
I found Lenore-Rhine film. And
wow.
At 6'3", 220 pounds, he plays exactly like that weight would indicate, that size. He uses every inch of his frame and the size to create mismatches. And he's going to remind people of a little bit of a Deebo Samuel kind of a situation. And I honestly think, based on what Tariq Young says the team has told him, that they view him in that sort of a role. And it'll be interesting to see. I like the pick. It's an interesting upside pick.
What I don't have for him is athletic stats. I don't
either.
And so
that's
what I'm looking at, because Deebo Samuel has elite athletic stats, and ran
a 4.42, I think 40.
Yeah, and so for Tariq Young, I just don't. I can't make any of those comps. And finding Lenore-Rhine tape was not something that I was able to do.
I just ran into it. It was just like, oh, I found something I wasn't even looking for, and I got to go check it out. So
yeah. And so I don't want to comment too much, but I do like that they went and got another 6'2" guy, 220. I like the fact that they are looking to be physical again. They're not. I mean, I love Tyler Lockett but you can't have a bunch of small guys. I mean, you can, but it's not ideal to have a bunch of small guys. You want guys that are bigger, stronger, faster, more physical. It's football. And getting another big guy with length and size and physicality, that's the type of stuff that I'm thinking is good for this team. This is a guy. One of the things that came out in the post draft interviews and all of that was that this is a guy who would occasionally work out with the offensive lineman in order to get his blocking and stuff better. They would move him around. He recognized that blocking was a big part of his job downfield, on the outside, doing what he's got to do. And that means he's willing to get in, get his hands dirty and do the grunt work, which a lot of receivers just don't want to do. And if he's going to be willing to do that and be physical and do those kind of things, there's a spot on a roster for a guy like that.
I agree. And he's a smart guy. He's leaving college with an engineering degree. He's getting an MBA online while he becomes a pro football player. So he's living the life for sure. Yeah, I'm excited. You would really like his playing style and his body type, his athleticism. It just screams running back. He looks like a tall running back if you watch him play. And the way Lenore Ryan used him is they did run a lot of those jet sweeps and give him opportunities in space to have the ball. So his athletic upside and measurables, I would imagine, are going to be slightly higher than average when we finally get a hold of him. If we do, I would think that he's going to run somewhere in the high 4.4s, and then probably, like a 35, 36-inch vertical type of a guy. Just looking at him.
You look at, so they doubled up at wide receiver with their last 2 picks. They both guys are guys that have gadget player, receiver with a running back body kind of, style and that kind of stuff. I found that to be interesting. That basically it looks like they're looking for a player like that, but because they're picking in round 7, they are like, let's hedge and see it. Let's take 2 and see if one of them pans out, because they want a player like that. And honestly, watching what the 49ers have done with Deebo Samuel, where he lines up out wide, and so you have your nickel package in, and then he rotates into the backfield, and they run it between the tackles with him, and you don't have the defenders to stop that. That kind of stuff, like, I could see why they want that. The 49ers really just got the most out of that situation that they had last year, and it's a copycat league.
So the Seahawks double up at wide receiver, cornerback, edge, and offensive tackle, and then grabbed a running back, which was another position of need. I'm going to just say, when we can start talking about the kind of the overall thing, maybe we can talk about the roster a little bit. I just thought they knocked this whole thing out of the park. I read some things online where people are a little disappointed, maybe not overall, but with the running back thing, it just really throws the whole draft because they just can't get over that aspect of it. Get over it. I mean, it's literally a pick that you're not going to have to worry about now for like 5 years. And the guy is going to be awesome, and he's going to make the team run better, more effectively, and more efficiently. And you'll never, ever have to think about where he was picked in the draft anymore. And it's just a player. It's just a guy that comes in.
Okay. So I want to address part of this, because one of the things is, who cares if you have a running back if you don't have a quarterback? True. I get that part of it. But so you're going to take a quarterback with a 5th or 6th round grade in round 2, rather than the best running back in the draft, or second best, depending on who you ask. How does that make your team better?
I think if this makes it any easier for people to digest, this is year 1 of a 2-year plan. This is not the full picture. Next year's draft, we've got 2 first rounds and 2 second rounds again. And we're not going to be that good this year. So those are going to be high picks. And this was a roster building exercise draft. This is getting key components, investing in the trenches, and getting ready to be competitive in 2023. I'm sorry, it's going to be a hard year in 2022. It just is. Running back here makes perfect sense for Seattle, given the situation on the current roster. You've got Chris Carson with the neck. He may or may not come back. He may or may not be effective. You've got Rashad Penny. It's a contract year again for Rashad Penny. And last year's 5-game run was his only 5-game run in 4 years.
In 4 years. He had 3 years of never playing, 3.5 years of never playing, and then suddenly 5 really good games.
In addition, we have a problem at the quarterback spot. We know that. They passed on all the quarterbacks, rightly so, in this draft, and they drafted a running back that they think that they might be able to lean on in 2022. God forbid we have to lean on the running game this year. I get used to that, because I think we're going to have to. It's just going to be one of those things. And to get the best prospect out of the draft in round 2 at pick 40 or 41, come on, that's great. That's a great pick. And I'll go against the grain. I'm going to say it. It's a great pick. It's a perfect fit for Seattle. And at that spot, after they've already got the tackle, after they got the edge, now you have a little bit of room to wiggle and go get your position group athletic stud. And they did that. So I think it's awesome. I think it's great.
And again, it comes back to, I think most of the hate comes into it because they don't have a quarterback. But the quarterbacks in this draft class were not worth picking. And every single NFL GM agrees with that.
And Kenny Pickett was an outlier, just an outlier. Probably should have gone normally in this draft. If Pittsburgh did not exist, he would have gone in the 4th round as well.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to the fact that none of these guys are NFL starters. Pickett looks like he might be, but if any quarterback in this draft was in the last year's draft, they would have been the 6th or later quarterback taken. All of them are 4th round picks or worse. And they don't improve the roster. If you go, oh, you don't have a quarterback, you should have gone and got Ritter. Why? Is he better than
Drew Lock? Is he better than Drew Lock? Is what we're asking, really, is the bottom line. Or any of these quarterbacks better than Drew Lock?
And as bad as Drew Lock has been as a pro, because he has not been good, the answer is no. None of these quarterbacks are better. Malik Willis has the potential, the high ceiling to become better, but he's got a lot of development before he gets close. And so I just don't see it. I'm glad that the Seahawks did not take a quarterback. And I've been saying that for the last, couple of months. I didn't want them to take a quarterback because you're going to end up with a mediocre guy. You're going to spend 2 or 3 years figuring out that he's mediocre and not worth all the time and energy. And that's 2 or 3 years of not being good enough. I'm sorry. None of these guys were worth it.
So as you sit back now and you've seen the picks, you've seen the strategy, now you've seen the roster, the additions onto the roster, the current position groups. How do you kind of grade the overall thing? Maybe not the individual players. I'm not asking you to grade individual players. I'm just the whole thing and what John Schneider and Pete Carroll did as far as coming in with the plan and executing it.
Actually, I think they did really well. They needed to change the way that they were roster building and stop going for flashy picks, stop going for, win now things, and go back to roster building like they had done, for the first few years that they were here. And they kind of did that. They were able to get 2 starting offensive tackles, a starting defensive end / outside linebacker, depending whether it's a 3-4 or 4-3 look. They went and drafted cornerback. These are the positions that help you win that nobody talks about because they're not sexy.
The first pick, Charles Cross, offensive tackle, Mississippi State, is the least sexy pick in the draft, and it's probably the best. I mean, it's really the best pick that they could have made at that spot, the safest, but yet the most effective in the right spot, at the right position group, at the right player. It was just like a no-brainer. That's an A+ for me.
To me, that pick was outstanding. You and I had looked at this, and we were both thinking, okay, they're going to trade down once, and then you get into the Trevor Penning range. I love Trevor Penning. I still think that would have been a great pick and a great strategy. But a part of the reason I liked that pick and strategy was that Charles Cross was expected to go 6 to Carolina. The fact that he was sitting there at 9 was crazy, and I just never guessed that was a possibility. And yet here it was. So they were like, got to take him. He's the better player. And I like that. And so they were able to go and get a guy that makes an instant improvement. They've needed to make that particular pick for about 3 years. Maybe 6 years.
Yeah. And we talked about the idea that if they dropped back, didn't take Trevor Penning, went with an edge or somebody like Jordan Davis early, that they would have to come around later on and pick a tackle. And we already identified Abraham Lucas as the guy that they might decide had left tackle attributes that they might be able to pick up in the 3rd round, or even as high as 241 if they really needed him or really wanted to go get him. And there he was sitting in the 3rd round, and we took him as well. And so we ended up getting both tackles.
Lucas
awesome.
is a guy with starting left tackle traits and footwork. He's just never done it. He was a starting right tackle forever in college, and Also, the other knock on him was, well, he played at Washington State where they don't run the ball. So there's very little tape on him as a run blocker.
As well as Charles Cross. They came from the kind of the same offenses.
Yeah, it's true. They are both very elite pass blockers who have twice as many pass block reps as anyone else in the draft, and that is good. I want this team to be developing the idea that they need to learn how to pass block, because ever since Tom Cable came here, they have decided they didn't want to pass block ever, and they only went after run blockers. And they've kind of changed that in the last couple of years when they went and traded for Jackson on the line, and then now they've got these guys. They've got some elite pass blockers. Now they're going to be rookies. You're going to be starting 2 rookie offensive tackles. It's going to be bad at times. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is going to be a hard growing pain year for those guys. Because you got 2 rookies at your offensive tackle. I'm okay with that, because this isn't going to be a good team overall anyway. And so getting them through those growing pains so they're ready to be
to protect a rookie. To protect a rookie really is what we're going to ask them to do in 2023.
Yeah, they're going to be ready to be on a team that's good. And they're going to be part of a good, solid offensive line moving forward. I like they've added both those guys. And the fact that, yes, they're going to be starting 2 rookies this year. So what? They're protecting Drew Lock. Let him get hit a bunch. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen now that, Shane Waldron and Andy Dickerson, this is they're really their first draft. They've had an effect on personnel, I think. And I like it. I like it. Yeah. And getting back to just the overall draft strategy of Pete Carroll and John Schneider, the draft by choosing Charles Cross at offensive tackle at 9, the rest of the draft was able to kind of come to them. That's why I think that you didn't see a lot of trades, because they position of needs and value lined up with them all the way through the draft. And that's what happens, I think, when you go take care of the key piece first, and then everything else just kind of falls into place. And that's what we saw.
Well, yeah, because you end up with a guy like Mafe, who people were talking about as an end of round 1 guy. He's still on the board at pick 40, and you go, well, that's easy. It's a position of need. It's a great value, good player. And he's sitting there, and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have expected that to happen. And you go ahead and you take him. If they had gone, let's say they'd gone cornerback early, then, for now you're looking at the spot and you're going, wait, we've got to get a tackle. We can't afford to come through this draft without one.
Right.
And so maybe you're reaching, and you're taking Abe Lucas, 32 picks earlier than you would have, because you needed,
right.
Because the need became greater. They didn't need to do that. Mafi was there. They took him. They went with Walker. Cool. They got down to pick 72. And I think that at that point they were probably thinking corner, because let's face it, they need corners. And you've got Lucas just sitting there, and you're like, wait, he was our backup plan at 40. And now he's here at 72. This is easy.
That's exactly, I believe, exactly the way that this draft went for that front office in that draft room.
And then, they get down to, like I said, they made me nervous when they took.
We texted about it. We were like, they need a cornerback.
Yeah. And Woolen was there, and then they took Kobe Bryant, and I was
exactly. Right.
At the time, I was like, okay. And then when they got to, pick 145 and they traded out of that spot to get that extra 7th round pick, I was like, well, I'm not excited about that. And then at 153, they still took Woolen. And once they took Woolen, the Kobe Bryant pick made way more sense to me, because they got a guy that can play right now. He doesn't have this super high ceiling. I don't think he's a guy that's ever going to, make a Pro Bowl, but he can play right now. And while they wait for Trey Brown to get healthy or Tariq Woolen to develop.
Yes. Yeah. And at 153, Tariq Woolen becomes one of the best values in the draft.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Crazy. Awesome. So what do you think about the roster now, Keith? While we head out of here, I just kind of want to see.
I still
Now,
think
do you think the potential? Well, hold on. Do you think the potential of the roster as formatted right now, minus the quarterback, is on the right track?
it was on the right track. I knew I was on the right track. Is yes, but they were on the right track coming into the draft. I like what they'd been doing, but they're not there. This still isn't a good roster. Their interior of their line, offensive line, it leaves something to be desired, especially at center. On defense, they need defensive tackles. They got defensive ends, but they need defensive tackles. They need a middle linebacker. They still need to figure out something at cornerback because unless Woolen develops very quickly, they don't have an elite guy at cornerback anywhere. I mean, the depth isn't great in a lot of positions. This is not a contending roster, and you're going to have one of the worst quarterback situations in the NFL. Maybe Carolina would be worse, but that's about it. And so you're looking at a roster that's probably, coming into the draft, I was thinking 3 wins. Now I'm thinking 4 or 5. Yes, they made that much of a difference in one draft, but really this draft is built for 2023 because you're going to be starting 2 rookies on your offensive line. That's not going to go well. If you're trying to win now, that would be like that would be a nightmare. But they're not trying to win now. They're trying to win then. So they're going to get them through their growing pains. Tariq Woolen is that project pick that will hopefully be able to make a massive impact in 2023. This is a roster built for that year. You got Boye Mafe, who's got to learn to drop into coverage and some of those things. So it's gonna be an up and down year for him. It's gonna be one of those things where you're looking at this, and after the end of the year, people are looking like, maybe this draft is like, because there's gonna be a lot of growing pains for some of these guys.
What is the maximum upside if everything works? Like if Lucas turns out, if Charles Cross turns out, if Kenneth Walker is Rookie of the Year, if our Eskridge comes up and plays, like we expected him to play last year, he comes in and plays like that this year. Now, let's just say Kobe Bryant, Tariq Woolen kind of work out, but Artie Burns is better than advertised, and Sidney Jones comes in and plays like he did in a few games last year where he was pretty good, and Trey Brown comes back from injury, and then Drew Lock is serviceable, or Geno Smith is serviceable. Can this team get to eight wins?
Maybe if things fall right.
It is one of those.
A lot of it would come down to injury and whatever. I think that the absolute max, the ceiling of this roster right now is 8 wins. But that involves everything kind of falling into place, and I don't expect that to happen.
And that's still 8 wins could still leave us in a position like at around 12, in the draft, pick number 12 overall or something like that, with 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks, plus maybe a future. I think that we still would have maneuverability to go up and get a quarterback if we needed to. But
it depends on the teams at the top, because if Carolina's up there, which I believe they will be, they're not trading back. They want a quarterback. If Miami Dolphins are up there, which I don't think they will be because the rest of the roster is better, if they end up there, they're going to want a quarterback. So you kind of have to look and you're like, okay, who's near the top? Because there's 2 quarterbacks that we know of. One of which, CJ Stroud, it looks like he's going to be the number 1 overall pick, and you got to be willing to trade up to that. The number 2 guy is not the biggest guy. He's small. He's
5'11", 190, Bryce Young, Alabama.
Yeah, so good player, but there's concerns. There'll be concerns about durability and his ability to, stand up to the punishment of the NFL. And really, you're kind of looking at that. You don't want to be too low in that draft order, because
that's true. That is true.
Because if there are people who are, okay, let's say the Jets end up there again. and they still believe in Zach Wilson. They're not going to trade down to 12 if they can trade down to 6 and still get the other picks that they want. And so it's just worth more to them. They're going to get a better player at 6 than at 12. So you don't want to get too low on the draft order because it just makes your life harder. 8 wins hurts this team in the long run. 6 wins is probably doable. You get up to 6 wins, you're probably 7 or 8 in the draft, and you can make that jump. If you are at 5 wins, you're at 3 or 4.
Right.
That makes it way easier.
And if you finish any less than number 1 overall, or any better than number 1 overall, you're dependent upon that particular team to not needing a quarterback. Maybe they need an edge rusher or something. Like Will Anderson, Alabama, had 17.5 sacks last year and 34 tackles for loss in just 2021. That guy's going to be right up there as well. And so he's going to be a top 3 pick. And so, if you've got one of these teams that has a quarterback, if you've got Jacksonville, which I still think their roster is bad enough for them to end up there again, that they don't need a quarterback. So they're going to take him. If you have, if the Lions end up at the top, they're taking the best guy. They're taking the best quarterback from you, and you can't offer them enough to have them trade out of it. And but I do believe that there's 3 top quarterbacks at the top of this draft as we talk, and I'm going to add Will Levis to this, the quarterback out of Kentucky at 230 pounds, got all the physical attributes. You go watch him play; he looks like a complete stud. He's making all the throws. He looks like Allen out of Buffalo. And I think that he's going to be a definite riser, a player to watch in 2023, or the 2022 season here coming up, and the 2023 draft.
Well, the fact that Kentucky was ranked and up there,
they were 10-3 last year, and it was all on him, really. And they beat a couple of quality teams because
that's not a football school, and they typically don't have a lot of NFL talent. So the fact that they were that good, you got to point to. You're like, okay, where are those extra wins coming from? And a lot of it did come from great quarterback play. So I'll give you that. I know that he's not talked about as one of those guys, but I think just Josh Allen wasn't talked about as one of those guys, and then he kind of just rose up through the. I guess
my larger, and there's a kid from UCLA that's supposed to have a great season here coming up. I think there's going to be 4 or 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round this year, as opposed to in this draft. And that may make things a little easier, where Seattle really identifies, they could take one of those 3 or 4 top guys. That might make it a little easier to kind of maneuver and not feel so bad about winning this year if they win a few games that nobody expects them to win or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if those other guys are there and they do look like it's not just 2 top quarterbacks. If it's 4, like a year ago it was 5, and so you didn't really have to do what the 49ers did and trade away your future in order to move up and get someone, because there's more. Because there's a lot of guys, you can kind of sit back and wait. I also think quarterback is in a sit back and wait position. Identify who that guy is and go get them.
Yes.
Because if
easier said than done at the top of the draft, but it's doable. It's doable. You might have to sell your franchise to do it. But the only other thing I will add, Keith, is that there's a fine line. And I think Pete Carroll has the right approach. And I always side with winning as opposed to losing or trying to position yourself in some future weird thing.
Yeah.
Is that there's a fine line in losing in the NFL where you lose your team, you lose your players, you lose your veterans, you lose your free agents coming up. And that's more costly than positioning yourself to go get a quarterback.
True. And I get that. But it's not a matter of, you don't lose on purpose. Your coaches, your players, you never go out with the idea that you're going to lose. It comes down to, as a roster,
talent deficit.
Are you good enough? And I think that this roster it's better now than it was 3 days ago, but it's still not balanced. You're still going to have 2 rookie offensive tackles. They let both their starting offensive tackles walk. They didn't replace them. They drafted the replacements. You're going to have 2 rookie starting offensive tackles. That is not a recipe for success this year. It's a recipe for success next year. And that's, again, that is, it is getting yourself aligned for that draft and that season in a way that you don't have to, no one's going to try and lose these games. They're just going to be,
falling short.
They're just going to be falling short. They're going to be unable to win them. They're going to give up a key sack at the wrong time and that kind of stuff. They're going to have a quarterback that throws key interceptions at the wrong time because, well, it's Drew Lock. And so they're going to lose games, but I do think they're going to be competitive in those games. And that's the difference. You don't want to go in and just have the doors blown off you in every game like Jacksonville. You want to, or Detroit, you want to be competitive in those games. And I think that they did some things in this draft, especially on offense with the 2 tackles and the running back. They're going to be more competitive than I thought they would be this year.
And that's why I think that they could get to 8 wins. They could be at 3. Just because it depends on the way the ball bounces. If Jason Myers misses a couple kicks, they're going to be a lot more dependent on 1-score games going their way in order to get to 8 wins this year. I think that's why they end up maybe somewhere in the middle of 3 and 8, like 5 or 6. I think is more in line with where they'll probably end up being. And if we had to do a prediction show right now, which we normally do in September, I think I would end up being in the 6 range.
I would probably end up in the 4 or 5 range because you end up in those 1-score games. Well, why was the Seahawks so good in 1-score games in the past?
Exactly. You nailed it right there.
Oh, wait, he's on the Denver Broncos roster instead of Seattle's. So that's where I run into that problem. I have a hard time saying they're going to lose a lot of 1-score games. And I'm okay with that. Because I want them to be competitive. I want the games to be fun. I'm not going to have the expectation that they're going to win a bunch and make a playoff run. But I also want them to be in position to get a quarterback and set this franchise going in the right direction long term. Yeah.
And I think this is a good start. I mean, they've had a good offseason. I think this is like the good offseason, considering you traded away your franchise quarterback. Okay, now what? You're resetting. It's just is. You're rebuilding, you're resetting, you do retooling, whatever you want to call it, it is. Pete Carroll can come out and say, hey, this is not a rebuild. We're in win now mode. We're nothing's changed, blah, 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 blah. He can say that. He can believe it. And he can make his team believe it because he's such a motivational guy. But the reality is we have talent deficits at key positions, number one being quarterback. And we'll see how that goes. I have faith that they'll get the best out of Drew Lock. I just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah. What is Drew Lock's best? So far, his best has been pretty bad. So
he has moments though. So it's interesting. If he can string those moments together, we'll find out. It'd be what a fantastic way to be wrong. I mean, if he ends up being a guy that's the point guard for this team and gets them to 10 wins somehow this year and blows away expectations, then this team set up next year with 2 first-round picks and 2 seconds to be even better. And so
if he comes
I'm not going to be a hater.
Does the absolute most unlikely thing and look like a true franchise quarterback, now you're a team and you're like, wait, we acquired these resources to go get a quarterback next year, and maybe we don't need one. Because if they get to 10 wins, make the playoffs, and all that behind Lock, and Lock looks good doing it, we can use those 4 picks to load up. We can get a top defensive tackle and an interior offensive lineman and another elite corner, and just really load the roster up and be good. Anyways, but
that's unlikely. That's literally in the 99th percentile likelihood of not happening.
Yes. And so I don't want anyone to get too like, oh my God, that sounds awesome. No, because it's still Drew Lock. We've seen him play. We've seen him be given a starting job in Denver and then lose it through bad play twice.
Yeah. All I'm gonna do is if he makes it through training camp and he's the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, I'm gonna give him a shot. I'm going to give him an unbiased shot to come in and
root for him.
Do a great job. Yeah.
You got to root for him. I don't want, don't be a hater. It's like when I was like really down on the Seahawks drafting Trey Brown last year. I didn't think he was going to be a good move. I'm very happy to be wrong on that. Like, I'm ecstatic that he turned out to be a really nice player. The injury is just so unfortunate, but he played really well.
Yeah, he was
when he got on the field.
Yeah, he was tracking to be a starter in the NFL for a while.
Yeah. And so I'm happy to be wrong. I'm not one of those guys that roots for guys to be bad so I can say I was right. Nah, not going to happen.
I think that's a great way to end it on a positive note. Let's get out of here. And good times ahead. Next Friday is the rookie training camp, at least the where everyone shows up. We didn't mention all the undrafted guys. There's 14 guys signed to undrafted rookie free agent contracts and 5 invitees to the.
Yep.
Yeah, and we'll have a separate show on that.
Yep, we'll come back and talk about them. In the next few days.
Yeah, early in the week. Yep.
So.
Yeah, perfect. So let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. You can find the show, podcast, YouTube, all that stuff. We're all over the place. Just search Seahawks Playbook Podcast. So until next time,
subscribe.
Keith.
Please subscribe, everybody. So go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.